We just had a little camera trouble there, so we're going to keep going. But again, I was asking what has been the best advice that you've received, either for performing or directing musical theater?
Cool. So I was saying before we had technical difficulties, we were talking just all about the different aspects of that as an actor and as a director, and I feel like some of the best advice that I've really sunk into the past couple of years, we actually started on a journey with when we went to Germany a couple of years ago, before we moved out here to Missouri, and we worked with a really awesome panel of teachers from international to national people, and one of the women that we mentored under, we were teaching fellows and also performing out in the southern region of Germany, and one of the things that she really kind of drove home for us was this idea that your audience is going to have an empathetic, visceral response to what you're doing on stage. They're not pulling out a checklist and looking at your technique and going, oh, that person's a beautiful singer because their melisma was perfect and every note was beautiful and the high C was so resonant. I mean, that's a plus, but that's not the whole focus. They want to be moved. They want to feel the story. So as actors, we need to give that to them. And the way you do that is by taking your technique and the solid foundation that you've worked on and bringing that acting and making them one. Don't keep them separate. And I feel like in school, especially coming from the classic background, we kept them separate. Mm-hmm. And it was like technique, 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 and now that you're on stage, act it too. What? You know, I was like, okay. So what's so freeing as an actor and as a director, you know, a music director, is when you can take that solid foundation of technique and then rename your technique. So if you need to take a low breath, don't think to yourself, okay, this is the part where I need to breathe low through my hips. Don't do that. Rename it. Take your intention of your piece and rename that breath, whether it's love, passion, hatred, whatever, so that your breath is infused with your acting. That way when you get on stage, you can trust that the technique is there and you can be fully present as an actor. And one of the other pieces that goes along with it that I think has to do with what you're doing on stage every day too, but especially in the audition room, I find makes a huge difference for me, is don't go in the room to create an outcome, go in the room to create. Just live and breathe in the character's life and in the character's mind and tell that story. And it's so freeing when you can do that, especially for days when you're not feeling well, which was today for me. When you're dealing with a cold or you're just kind of having a rough day or life outside the theater is kind of clouding your mind. Being able to go in and say, okay, my voice may not be 150% perfect today, but that's okay. I'm still going to give a good show because I am going to act the heck out of it and I am going to lean on this character's story. And then, yeah, maybe your voice cracks. Maybe it's not absolutely everything is pitch perfect, you know, but it's going to be honest and it's going to be real and it's going to move someone no matter what.
Yeah, I think something really cool that I learned was, I'll give her the plug. Her name is Lindy Franklin Smith. My biggest mentors. She is the owner of the Lexington Theater Company, so if you ever have a chance to work for them, take it, because she's incredible.
Say the name of the theater company.
The Lexington Theater Company. Okay. She's on Broadway with Chorus Line. She was a dance captain for the revival. She's incredible. Anyway, what she was saying about how forgetting your technique on stage, I think it's really cool when you have a director that really pushes you to live in the moment, because so many times, you know, I've been in master classes and voice lessons and stuff where the technique is the focus and there's like 50 eyes on you in the room saying if you really take that breath as low and you really place it right and you do all these nuancy things. And I've also been in a room where Lindy's like driving the story into you and getting you in that moment, and to see the technique just happen.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yes.
It's incredible. Like all of a sudden this person who has never taken a really good low breath in their life just did it because of some like spiritual aura storytelling force that just works their way into them and makes it happen. And it's so cool when, especially in ensemble singing, when you have moments of like where a couple characters are singing or three characters are singing, how all of a sudden like cutoffs are just together, how vowels just match, how all these crazy things happen, all because they forgot the technique. You forget the technique and you get it.
Yes.
It's like it's a weird juxtaposition of it all.
It's a balance.
Yeah, I want to jump in on what Peter was just saying, because it happened to me in college. In my undergrad, I had my voice teacher was trying to get me to learn head voice, and I wasn't getting it. I was my freshman year, and I was not understanding head voice, and I tried and tried. Well, in that freshman year, I went into theater training. And I thought my voice professor wasn't going to let me, but he was like, oh no, if you think that's something that God's leading you to do, I think you should do it. And he was like I mean, he was this huge man who you did not cross him, and I thought, oh, he's going to kill me. But he said, no, you should try it. This is the time to try it. So I did some theater training for about a year, and then when I begged to come back and get some more voice lessons because I really wanted to do musical theater and stuff. And so I came back and I was in his studio again, and we started working, and he said, now I want to hit head voice here. And he said, I want it to do this. And I said, oh, you mean like having an egg in the back of your throat? And he said, what? And I said, it was something that we talked about in voice. Oh, we talk like this and we get the resonance. And he said, I don't know, just try it. And so I started singing, and I immediately flipped into head voice. And he was like, how'd you do that? I mean, and to this day, God bless him, he just passed this last year. But he was always telling people that story, that if you can't get them to get head voice, send them over and have them do some theater training, and they'll come back and they'll be able to do head voice. So it's amazing the things that we get that we can take with us and use. You guys are so wonderful. One thing I want to say, Justin, you already did this for me. I was going to ask, how do you reconcile your actors who are new to musical theater, the obvious incongruity of characters breaking into song and dance? And you guys answered that in many ways already. Is there anything else you want to add to that as far as how, we talk about, I find a lot of people don't like musical theater because, that's not real. Nobody sings and dances, and I'm like, in our family we do. But in reality that doesn't happen. But you had a great response to that earlier, Justin. Anybody else have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's just recognizing what musical theater really is. I mean, it's heightened emotions.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. It's like the reason that we sing is because speaking no longer communicates the emotions that we want to convey.
Yeah.
The reason why we dance is because
Just
the
standing there
normal
isn't gonna do
movement
it.
doesn't convey the emotions we want to say anymore. So recognizing that and letting it come from a place that builds you into it is so important. Because otherwise you're just like singing all of a sudden for no reason. You have to have a reason. You have to have something to propel you in that direction, or else the journey of from spoken dialogue to song just is like, it's like slamming the acceleration, just like throwing the audience in.
Yeah.
And where does the emotion come from? It comes from the story. And that's what we were talking about too earlier. The story is what drives that emotion forward.
Yeah, and really yes, I mean, it is a heightened sense. It's not real life unless you're a musical theater performer, and then it probably is closer to real life than we'd like to admit. But,
See me in my car
in
then.
one sense, right? In one sense, that concept, and that was the exact quote I was thinking in my head too, about just the emotion, how it bubbles over and turns into more. Honestly, if you think about real life, that does happen in real life. If you get a text of something like awesome just happened, or you find out this great news, you don't go, oh, that's very nice, cool. You go, yes, woo! So you've just sung and danced right there. It's the same thing that we do in musical theater. We do it in real life. We just don't always recognize it as being that because it's stylized. But really all we're doing is mirroring real life, and then we're just blowing it up a little bit.
When you get into a fight, I mean, yelling, that's just bad singing.
Yeah.
So there you go. You're just having a singing match.
Thank you, Music Man. Almost a Music Man thing to say.
And it's also just a vehicle to get it to learn characters much more quickly than it is I would say in a play that would elongate relationships more. Like through a song, you can fall in love with in 2 minutes. You can, you can learn about a character in 2 minutes. It really just pushes story and character much quicker because you can just get so much done. Yeah. And I don't think there was ever the intention writing the musical, or at least in my opinion, that it was supposed to be reality in those moments. I don't think there was ever that intention. It's almost, it alludes back to Shakespeare when a character would speak to the audience. It's so you can get to the character's wants and needs and who they are quicker, and also in an intimate setting. We've been talking, and character's been talking to the audience since Greek. You know,
Right.
that it's nothing new. It's just doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, music is powerful. Dance is powerful. I mean, even again, mirroring life. If you're having a bad day, you want to pop on a sad song, that you can kind of wallow in. If you're having a great day, you pop on a happy pop song because you feel good driving down the road. And it's just because music is emotional. It's so powerful. And the same thing we do in musical theater. We're taking that heightened sense to then drive that emotion even further, which honestly is what's fun about
And
it.
it's biological. We all have a beat and a rhythm that we are having every single day. It's our heartbeat. And when something's exciting, your heart beats faster. Or when you're feeling down, like maybe your pulse is a little bit slower. But it's just one of those things where it can literally be translated into music,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
can just be put right there in
Yeah,
front of us.
there's been studies done where audiences were heart rate monitors.
Yeah.
And like a whole audience
Yes.
will kind of join in to
Yes.
the same BPM.
Yeah.
It's like crazy.
It all just settles
It's like you're
together.
literally having a physiological, biological response to a story,
Yeah.
and a story told well.
Yes.
That's
And
what's so powerful.
And to add to that, the other thing that happens with music is we have poetry. We have the economy of words that poetry is, and just the right words put together in a shorter amount of time. So you can get that love song done in 3 minutes, and get all of the nuances of it. And we're using connotation instead of just denotation to get people to bring the emotions, not just of the characters, but hopefully of the entire audience along with us. So that's great. Again, you guys this has been wonderful. I'm gonna close with one last question, and I'd like each of you to share a favorite moment from your musical theater career. It could be a moment that touched you spiritually. It could be a time when you royally screwed up, or someone else royally screwed up. Please don't share mine, okay? Because I screw up.
It's alright, there's video of it.
There's video evidence of all of my screw ups. I promise. They're all there. So, but if you have to, you can use that. But I'm sure you all have your own. But maybe a favorite song, dance, interaction, whatever. Just share a favorite.
One of the things that popped into my head when you told us about that question was going back to, I think, like my freshman or sophomore year in college, and we did this cabaret at this old theater.
Old opera house.
Old opera house. It was one of those traveling.
Teeny tiny town of Cedarville.
Yeah. One of those places where traveling shows would hit way back in the day. And I got to sing If I Can't Love Her from Beauty and the Beast. And there was this part where, and I knew I knew God wanted me to do music. And I just knew that I wanted to do that. Like, I'd known it for a long time, and I'm a pretty indecisive person. So it was pretty amazing that I'd known that since I was like a teenager. So there was this part where I was blocked to like climb these steps and turn around right before the high note. And in the performance, I'd never had an experience like this. I was like just ready to turn around and sing. I was in the middle of the song, I was wrapped up in it, and I had this thought of like, yes, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I just had that visceral response just to the whole art form. So, yeah.
Neat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have so many stories, so
Right?
many things.
And so young.
Yeah.
Listen,
Just some. I'll share audition stories because those are fun.
Yes.
Some of my worst auditions. Only the worst. You don't want to hear about the best because those are.
They're not
boring.
fun, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. There was one where I was auditioning for Joseph in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I had done it before, so I just whipped out some old music from my room that I had to take to the accompanist, and I sang Close Every Door. I wasn't like super excited about doing it that my school was doing, and I didn't really want to do it, but I was like, I'll just audition for Joseph. And I gave it to my accompanist, who I know very well, Brock Terry. He's a great guy, great accompanist. And I proceeded to sing the song. It was all going well, going great. And then there's a moment in the song where there's a key change, and it's at the climactic, emotional part of the song. And that's what I'd done in the show, so that's what I did in the audition. But I did not realize that I gave him music that did not have a key change in it. So for 2 or 3 measures straight, I was screaming a half step sharp from the piano. And my accompanist knew exactly what was going on, and he apologized after and was like, I'm sorry that I'm not a good enough accompanist to just change the key on the fly, or else I would have. because they're companies that can do that. So I sat down after it was a group audition. I felt terrible. I was like, this is
good.
awful. I sat down next to one of my friends who I went through school with. Very, very, very sweet girl. And this is how I knew it was really bad. She just looked at me. She would never say anything mean. She just looked at me and said, well, that last one was really good. The end was really good. And I was like, thank you, and sunk into my seat as far as I possibly could, and did not book that show. Did not get it. Not even ensemble. Nothing. They didn't want- But I went on to do okay things. So. That's one of a million stories I could share.
Oh my gosh.
I think maybe one of my many fond memories of things that have happened, like fun things that have happened on the musical theater stage, is when we were living in Charlotte. I did a lot of work for the Children's Theater of Charlotte, and that's really the first place that I got into doing new works. We were creating TYA, which is Theater for Young Audiences, which is different from children's theater. So TYA and children's theater are slightly different in that children's theater would be a theater in which children perform for adults. TYA is specifically adult professional actors putting on shows that are geared toward a younger age group. So they're really big about new works. And we had the chance, actually Conrad and I were both in the original creation of the show. There was a show called Ella's Big Chance that's taken out of a children's book, and it's a 1920s jazz age version of Cinderella, in which the story doesn't end the traditional way that Cinderella ends. It ends with a little bit of a twist and a turn, and it's very applicable just to today. And beautiful story. And I had the chance to originate a role in the workshop that I then was hired for a year and a half later, putting it on stage. And that was the first of 3 or 4 shows where that happened, where I got to be in a workshop and then got to originate the role. And having the chance to breathe life into a character whose words are literally being written and changed on the fly, as the author is sitting there going, "Ooh, I don't like the way that was said, let's scratch this, try this one, ooh, change these notes, can you read it this way, sing it this way, try it this way." And having a chance to go through that process critically, like the mental engagement that you bring as an actor to that, problem solving, going through the story with the composer and the writer, and then getting a chance to literally be a part of the first time that character has ever breathed life onto stage, is just something I will never, ever, ever forget. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think overall some of my fondest memories are directors and music directors that allowed you to be collaborative and let you have input on things, because then when the final product came on the stage, you didn't feel like you're just reciting something they told you to do.
Because you really owned
But
it.
you feel like you had something to do with the character you're bringing. It's like part of you. So totally.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Do you want to go? You can go.
Oh gosh. I guess I'm going. No, it's okay. I have, like Peter, there's just so many things that could be said. But yeah, the one that just keeps coming to mind is actually, it's a rehearsal story. It was with Bob. I did Fiddler on the Roof, and I played Golda, and I was far too young to play Golda. I was 22, singing after 25 years, and I hadn't lived that many.
But now you play old people.
But
so.
Listen, I still, to this day. Actually, I've played a lot of old people at that same theater. So going into rehearsal for Fiddler on the Roof, we were doing music rehearsal for Do You Love Me? And Bob, who was an equity artist who came in for that show, was 60 plus at the time. I think he's never going to see this. We're going to send it to him. But Bob had a daughter who was older than me, and so he came in for rehearsal, and he was like, he's just this, older, large man from the East Coast. He was like, "How old are you, sweetie?" And I was like, "I am 22, Bob." And he goes, "Okay, let's sing." And I was like, "Let's sing, Bob."
Oh yeah.
And it was such a lovely process. He was such an amazing guy. Just so great and so funny. But I still play old people to this day. Actually, yeah, a lot of good memories from that theater. I also played an older woman later in the season, and they did this thing called Zoo Line. Zoo Line is where the best stories come from. It's where you line up at the end of a show like you're in a zoo, and the people come through and they're like, "Good show, good show."
Oh,
good show."
God.
They pet you
And they pet you. Well,
Yes.
this rather older lady, a season ticket holder, came up and she goes, "How old are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm 22." And she goes, "Oh, good for you." She's the same lady who asked me if I was wearing a padded costume when I was not.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I had that age thing happen,
Yeah.
but the exact opposite. I was playing Kyle in Legally Blonde, and the woman playing Paulette was not
Of course.
significantly older than me, but she was clearly old enough to the point where it made her very uncomfortable to like do the Irish jig with me. Like the whole time she was like don't talk to me when we're on break. I'm like, whoa, okay. Super nice
Whoa,
girl.
man.
Other than that, she was an equity actor. She was actually one of the originals in Hairspray on Broadway. So like a super awesome,
Amazing.
talented person, but like was very uncomfortable.
comfortable.
But I was like maybe 20 years younger than her. Like she was in her 40s.
To be fair, that is a show, theater history, I know about this show, where like she's supposed to be objectifying you, so she probably didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable.
But like I think wasn't she older in the original? Like
Yeah, she's supposed to be older.
Yeah,
It's
she's
supposed to be.
cougar.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Actually, fun fact: Orfei, who was the original
Is married
Paulette, is married to the original
yes,
Kyle.
Okay.
fun fact. That's cool.
Okay. Anyway.
Your turn.
Take us
Oh,
out,
man.
Justin. What's your favorite?
My favorite. It's like not funny though. All these are funny.
okay.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. I tell this story.
I know.
I think a lot of y'all have heard this, but I did Fiddler when I got out of college as well, and it was just I was way too young to play Tevye, but it was a lot of fun, and really cool cast, really cool director, and it was just a very fully realized piece. Like when you do a piece and you're like, wow, this is what it's supposed
legs.
to. Yeah, like the talent's there, but it also has it's got just like that extra sweetened like. Just that sweet sauce on it that makes it
Everything
feel
worked
good.
together,
And yeah, it was just a really good piece. And we had a matinee, then we had a night show, and I was like, I need to go home after the matinee because you're on stage. If you're Tevye, you're just on stage for 2 hours, and it was just tiring. And I met this Jewish woman stopped me. She was from Brooklyn. And she's like, I need to talk to you. I was like, oh, okay. And she just talked to me forever just about the show. And she's like, I'm Orthodox Jew. I'm from Brooklyn. You need to meet someone. I was like, all right. She brings up like her like 95-year-old mother. She's like, I saw Zero Mostel in the original production. He's got nothing on you. I'm like, thank you, ma'am. I don't have any Tonys. And so. She's like, I got one more person for you to meet, and she brings up her daughter, and she's probably like 10, 11, and she's pale white, and she has no hair, and she has like red eyes. She has eyes, excuse me. That would have been bad. And her daughter and her mom told me, she introduced me to her and told me her name and just told me a little bit more about her. And I know it's less sad of a
This is
story.
about to get sad now, isn't it?
Yeah, no, but I know. But Steve, she eventually told me, she's like, hey, she only gets out of her New York apartment like 2-3 times a year.
Wow.
And she's like, I watch the movie once a week. It's super important to our family. And she's never got to see it live because she was born after last revival, and this was the closest one we wanted to see. We just wanted to see it, and she just really talked about how much she liked it. And it's interesting because as an actor, and we do a lot of shows, and we always say like you never know who's in the audience, and it's kind of easy to kind of blow that off a little bit, and then you kind of meet that person, and you're like, that's why you gotta kind of have your A game on. Yeah. And I think it's also another reason that you do research because we had an Orthodox Jewish family in the audience, and Woodstock, where I performed, is actually a very Jewish city. And we had to make sure that our representation of their faith was correct and it was real. And when we prayed in Hebrew. When our gestures were realistic, they were taken from their culture. And again, you just kind of never know who's going to be in the audience, and that kind of pushed me forth to, no matter what I'm doing, I want to do a piece that's going to really change people and be there for people. And it's got to be something that people want to see, and people are reflected in that.
I think that's great, Justin. That's one reason why I think all of us do what we do, is because we want to find that important part of the puzzle that is going to really speak truth into the life of people, and because ultimately, where theater takes place is not on stage. Theater does not take place on stage. Theater takes place in the minds of everybody in the audience who's seeing it. And it's a different show every single time. Every single person is seeing a different show. It's what God uses what we do on stage to do something in the lives of people. And we had that just before Conrad was at after show ministry, and people came up and they weren't sure that they knew the Lord, and so Conrad had time to pray with them and to speak to them. So it's always, we never know who's in the audience, but we always know one person is in the audience, and that's who we're really performing for. And as believers, that's what we're doing. So whether we're doing Fiddler or whether we're doing something else, so or whether we're doing what we do here, so there's always looking for truth and redemption in what we do. Guys, we thank you. We're going to stop the panel discussion here today. Thank you for watching. Go write your papers, and we'll come back in a few weeks and talk about trends in theater as well. So thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. I give them applause. Okay. Yay. Thank you.